My name is Kathleen Breidenbach. I'm the Vice Dean of the New School for Public Engagement. It's with great pleasure that I welcome you to New York and to the New School. We're very proud that along with New York University, the New School for Public Engagement, the founding division of the New School, is hosting this annual meeting and conference of the Agriculture, Food, and Human Values Society, the Association for the Study of Food and Society, and the Society for the Anthropology of Food and Nutrition. We believe we are, as I was explaining to Marion Nestle earlier, we believe we are a particularly apt host for this conference. The New School for Public Engagement is committed to understanding and engagement at the intersection of the academic, the practical, and the public through theoretical and historical interrogation, investigation of policy, critical examination of culture, and through a deep commitment to civic responsibility. This approach is perhaps nowhere better exemplified than in the field of food studies, where historians, scientists, policy activists, and food entrepreneurs and professionals engage in rich conversation about food production and distribution and environmental, social, economic, and health issues. The New School for Public Engagement is in the process of developing several new undergraduate degree programs in food studies, as well as establishing collaborations with institutional partners, such as the International Culinary Center, in order to deepen the conversation between food industry practitioners and those who investigate food in all its parameters and implications. We hope further collaborations, cooperation, and creative ideas will emerge among all of you during your conversations here this week. One last note. This is the first time we've had scaffolding in front of this building in all the years I've worked here. It's a landmarked building, and they're doing some repairs to the facade that have been needed for years. They decided to do it now so that the dean of our undergraduate studies school won't have water pouring into her office anytime it rains. Please accept our apologies. She's down here in the front. Please accept our apologies. I hope you find your time here this week engaging and informative and not too hazardous. I'm now very pleased to introduce one of the coordinators of the conference, Fabio Parasecoli, Professor and Chair of Food Studies at the New School for Public Engagement. Fabio?
Thank you, everybody. Before we start, a few housekeeping announcements, very important. If you had made a reservation for tomorrow night's dinner and you haven't received an envelope with your destination, please make sure to pick it up at registration here at the entrance. For tomorrow morning, if you sign up for tours and you have not heard from your tour guide, you can contact Jennifer Berg, but at any rate, make sure you check your email because you might have received information about it. Last thing, tomorrow and Saturday, all our panels will be at NYU. So not here any longer. This is the last day here. Check your program for your map with all the locations. It's very close. It's on Washington Square Park. So we're in the same neighborhood. We're sorry about any kind of problem you might have encountered. We have tried our best to accommodate everybody, and we are dealing with unprecedented numbers this year. We're at around 600. So, you know, the logistics have been interesting, to say the least, but we're happy that so far everything is working. I wanted to thank, well, the New School, in particular, the Dean and the Vice Dean of this division, because they've been very helpful and generous in allowing us to organize and host part of the conference here. But also I want to thank the Public Programming Office and the catering. They've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes to make this happen. I also want to thank the AV staff that is helping us with this, maintenance, facilities, security. I must say everybody has been very collaborative to make this happen. Having this number of people in a building creates some problems. I want to thank all the volunteers that you've seen wearing the crazy yellow t-shirts. they are crazy and yellow because we wanted to make sure you saw us, and I think it worked. A special thanks to the conference committee, but in particular, there are 3 people that Jennifer and I really want to thank. That's Scott Barton. You might have been in touch with him for the tours and the dining for tomorrow night. He's been working in slings. He's broken his elbow and his wrist, and he's been typing with his, thumbs on his phone. So he's been a real trooper. Thank you to Shane Figueroa. She's been fantastic with lots of administrative issues. And thanks to Amy Orr, who works with me here at the Food Studies program. She's been dealing with the actual program and the panels and all that. Without these 3 people, Jenny and I could never have done this. So I really want to thank. Well, and of course, thanks to Jenny Berg from NYU. The 2 of us have worked together on this, and it's been fun. It's been scary, but we're happy we did it. And now to tonight's program. I'm very happy to introduce Marion Nestle. You all know the name. I'm very glad to introduce her because she's actually the one who first invited me to teach. I was a journalist. I had never thought about teaching, and here I am. So that's really thanks to her. A few years ago, she's like, why don't you come and teach a class for us? And it snowballed down from there. So it's really close to my heart. Marion is the Paulette Goddard Professor in the Department of Nutrition, Food Studies, and Public Health at NYU. And she's been the chair of the program from 88 to 2003. She's also a professor of sociology at NYU and a visiting professor of nutritional sciences at Cornell. She did her PhD in molecular biology and MPH in public health nutrition from UC Berkeley, and she's the author of many very well-known books. Here you have the covers. I'm sure that many of you have read them. Food Politics, Safe Food, What to Eat, her books on pet food, which are really interesting, and Why Calories Count. She writes for the San Francisco Chronicle. She's got a column called Food Matters, and she also has a blog on which she writes very interesting stuff, commentaries on what happened. So please welcome Marion Nestle.
Thank you, Fabio, for the nice introduction, and I'm so glad you didn't mention the time that I was riding behind you on a scooter in Rome. I wish I had a picture of it. I'm really delighted to be here to give this talk. I'm very honored to be asked. I've been going to meetings of this meeting since the late 1980s, although I've missed a few in recent years, and the numbers have grown, and it's really wonderful to see it. It never occurred to us in 1996, when we at NYU started our food studies program, undergraduate, master's, and doctoral, that at the time it seemed like the right thing to do for what we were doing at NYU. It never occurred to us at the time that it was the right thing to do for so many other people, and it's just been thrilling to watch what's happened to food studies in whatever its manifestations are over the intervening 16 years. What I've learned from going to these meetings was to become a food systems person and to think like a food systems person. As somebody who was trained in nutrition, it never occurred to me when I first started that agriculture had anything to do with what people eat. I was kind of late in figuring that one out, and now I think you can't understand anything about food, nutrition, or public health unless you understand how the agricultural system works. And this meeting integrates all of those, and it feels like a very comfortable place for me to be. this is just a thrilling time to be interested in these kinds of issues. It's the first time in my lifetime that a First Lady of the United States was interested in the same kind of issues that I am. And I think that really sets a tone for the country. We're right at the cutting edge of what a lot of people think are really interesting issues. When Jenny and Fabio asked me to talk, they specifically asked me to talk about the Farm Bill, which they thought would be a topic that would relate to the interests of many, many people who are coming to this meeting. And so that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to be talking about the Farm Bill. And I want to start that conversation by quoting from one of the best things that Michael Pollan ever wrote, in my opinion, which was his letter to the farmer-in-chief of 2008. This was before President Obama was elected, in which he suggested that what this country needed to do was to re-solarize the American farm, that take care of our energy policy, re-regionalize the food system so that we do regional and local food, rebuild America's food culture, and change the Farm Bill into a food bill. And I think that sets the tone for exactly the kinds of things that I'm going to be talking about, and also establishes a basis for everybody's relationship to the Farm Bill, which should be of interest to everyone. I taught a course on the Farm Bill in the last fall, and I did that because I didn't think I knew nearly enough about it, and I thought, what better way to learn it than to teach it? It was an interesting experience. I asked the class on the first day to tell me what they thought an ideal farm policy would be. And they came up with a list that I think says it all. An ideal farm policy would provide adequate and affordable food for everybody in the country. It would allow farmers and farm workers to make a decent living. It would promote local, regional, organic, and sustainable food systems. It would help promote fruits and vegetables so people would be eating healthier diets. We would be fair in the kind of food aid and trade that we did with our foreign neighbors. It would protect natural resources and animal welfare and prevent climate change, pollution, and unnecessary waste. This is a large order for anything. And as we'll see, the Farm Bill does practically none of this. The starting point for this discussion is the Farm Bill that is still in existence. This is the 2008 Farm Bill. It was passed in 2008. And it's a document of 663 printed pages, very small type, a table of contents that takes up 14 pages. It costs the American taxpayers an average of about $85 billion a year. It is totally visionless in contrast to what the students came up with, and it is entirely political. And that's kind of a harsh introduction to it, but I think I'm going to be able to back that up with some other things that I'll explain. What never occurred to me at the time that I agreed to do this talk was that this week, today, the Senate would pass its version of the Farm Bill, which it did at about 4 o'clock this afternoon. This is the Agriculture Reform, Food and Jobs Act of 2012, a document of 1,010 pages that is estimated to cost about $97 billion a year over the next 10 years. The senators, in their infinite wisdom, introduced 300 amendments to this bill. That was whittled down to 73, and the Senate has been spending this week dealing with those amendments, and it finished that today. The bill itself, I think, and the pieces of it exemplify or relate to many, many of the issues that those of you who are at this meeting are working on. There are some interesting resources for learning about the Farm Bill. One of them is this very awesome good is the name of this website, and it's got this nice little infographic. Once, roughly every 5 years, Congress passes an enormous yet obscure piece of legislation called the Farm Bill. It sets the rules for American farms. It affects the health of our environment and the health of our population. It absolutely does all of those things, and obscure is an understatement. The other really terrific resource on the Farm Bill is a book written by Dan Imhoff called The Citizen's Guide to the Next Food and Farm Bill. And if you want to learn more about the bill, this is a really good place to start. How we got to the point where we are with the Farm Bill is a story about American history. And the history begins in the 1930s when we were in the midst of a Great Depression. There was the Dust Bowl. Farms were failing. Even if they could produce products, they weren't able to sell them because people didn't have any money. And it was really a mess. And Congress stepped in and set up a system of supports for farmers, particularly the farmers of commodities, that involved loans, price supports, limits on the number of acres they could farm, and various kinds of marketing programs to help them do it. And those programs started in the 1930s, and over the years, farmers became dependent on the programs and began to view them as entitlements. And these entitlements were reinforced by what turned out to be a very tight alliance between agribusiness, the Department of Agriculture, which administered the programs, and congressional agriculture committees in the House and Senate, which passed the laws that the USDA was able to administer. And the tight connections between agribusiness, USDA, and the congressional agriculture committees meant that the system was absolutely impenetrable. There was absolutely nothing that could be done about it. And I guess the best example of that was Jamie Whitten, who was the chair of the Appropriations Subcommittee on Agriculture from 1949 to 1995. And he was considered the permanent Secretary of Agriculture because of the power that he had over the connection between agribusiness, the USDA, the Department of Agriculture. The main Department of Agriculture building in Washington is the Jamie Whitten building. That's why. That situation changed in the late 1960s and early 1970s with the advent of the national anti-hunger movement. A good place to start looking at that movement was at the White House Conference on Food, Nutrition, and Health that took place in 1969, at which people from all over the country came together to try to do something about hunger and malnutrition in the United States. At about the same time, the CBS documentary, Hunger in America, was aired and shocked the nation with its pictures of starving people, and particularly starving babies in Appalachia. That film is available on video, and if you've never seen it, it's really worth a look, not only because of how powerful it was, but also the idea that anything that's shown on television could have the power that that documentary did. You just can't imagine anything like that today. That was followed by the appointment of the Senate Select Committee on Nutrition and Human Needs, the McGovern Committee, which started the whole work on food assistance programs, leading to the current programs that we have today. Agriculture also changed during this period, and this paper by Carolyn Dimitri and her colleagues at the then at the Economic Research Service talked about the way in which agriculture transformed in the 20th century. And there were a number of very remarkable trends. One was the decline in the number of family farms, a halving in number between 1950 and 2000. It went from 5 million family farms to about 2 million. And at the same time, the size of the farms increased and went from from 200 acres to more than 500 acres on average. The number of crops per farm decreased. It used to be in 1900, there were an average farm produced 5 different crops. By the year 2000, it was down to 1, corn or soybeans mainly. And at the same time, because of technological improvements, the productivity of these farms increased enormously. So whereas in 1950, a farm could feed 27 people, by the year 2000, it was one farmer could feed 139 people. So a much more efficient system. Get big. In 1950, if you look at the way the country looked in 1950, most of the country was still agricultural. The green areas are non-metro, that's non-city counties that are dependent on farming for most of their income. By the year 2000, just that line down the Midwest were non-metro farming-dependent counties. So a big shift from rural to urban America. And while all this was going on, the health status of the country went from being one that was very worried about not having enough food to one in which obesity became the predominant public health problem. And these are the famous CDC maps. These happen to be from 1990 to 2010. And the darker the red color, the greater the percentage of obesity, largely due, I think, to the great overproduction of calories that occurred because of those agricultural changes. Because of obesity, dietary guidance had to change, and it went from encouraging people to eat more to encouraging people to eat less. And the most recent 2010 recommendations are to make half your plate fruit and vegetables, not soybeans and corn, fruits and vegetables. So all of this led to the idea that we ought to change the Farm Bill into one that was in which agricultural policy and health policy were more tightly linked, and there was actually a connection between them. And starting with the 2008 Farm Bill, there were increasing pressures on agriculture committees to try to get the Farm Bill to support public health in some way. So one of the things to look at is what's actually in the Farm Bill, if you're not familiar with it. The 2008 Farm Bill, again, still in place, had 15 titles or sections, and the parts of it that dealt with the farm safety net, that is the support for farmers, commodities credit, and crop insurance, are only 3 of the 15 titles. The other titles had to do with conservation and how we trade with our neighbors and how we do food assistance for the poor, rural development, which largely means broadband, the entire agricultural research enterprise, forestry, energy policy, ethanol. One title, Title 10, having to do with horticulture and organic, the kinds of fruit and vegetable things that a lot of us are interested in, and then livestock and trading commodities. All of that is in one bill. So it's huge, and that's why it takes up so much room. Just to give you a taste of what the Farm Bill is really like, this is the table of contents for Title 10, Horticulture and Organic Agriculture, referred to in the trade as specialty crops. And what's interesting about it is that there's some nice programs in here, farmers market promotion program and block grants for specialty crops. But what fascinated me just looking at the table of contents was the minutia that the Farm Bill deals with. And there are special programs in this title for clementines, mushrooms, Hass avocados, honey, and asparagus. Some lobbyist really had a good time with this one. So the Farm Bill deals with minute programs, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. It also is overwhelmingly complex. And the complexity, to me, is best illustrated by milk marketing orders, which are the rules that set the prices for fluid milk. This happens to be the Class 1 price structure, which is the one that pays the most to dairy farmers. And what all those colors represent are different pricing structures for those regions. In the upper Midwest, the regions are very large that have the same pricing structure. But if you look at the Northeast states, you can see that there's practically a new color every quarter inch. And it's one of the reasons why Northeast dairy farmers are always complaining about how they can't make any money. It's enormously complex. The programs are so difficult to understand that it takes documents, papers, and books to try to explain how they work. And remember, there are hundreds of these. This is an example called the Supplemental Agricultural Disaster Assistance Payment Mechanism in the 2008 Farm Bill, and it gives a mathematical chart about how you calculate what the actual benefit is. So the take-home lesson from this is that the Farm Bill programs are massive in scope and massive in number. They're complicated. They're really hard to understand. And that makes them especially vulnerable to special interests. And I think it makes the Farm Bill profoundly, deeply undemocratic, mainly because I cannot imagine that any senator or congressperson can understand it in its entirety. You're lucky if they have people on their staff who understand just a few of the programs. So the special interests come into this at every stage of the passing of a farm bill. And this is a diagram for those of you who have forgotten your high school civics class. This is a diagram of how bills are passed. The Senate is on the left and the House is on the right. And I just moved the arrow. Actually, Fabio helped me move the arrow on this from floor action to bill passed because the Senate passed its version of the Farm Bill this afternoon. The House hasn't started dealing with it yet, so we get to do the whole thing all over again with the House, which is likely to be even more contentious than the Senate was. But anyway, that's where we are, and whether President Obama will sign this or not when it gets to him is another matter. My prediction had been that this would never get passed before the election, but I think I'm going to be wrong about that. So let's talk about lobbying just for a second. The OpenSecrets.org tracks lobbying of various sectors of the economy, and the annual lobbying on agribusiness reached a peak in 2008. That's the last Farm Bill. And it's only done about 25 or 30 million so far in 2012, but we're not finished with 2012 yet. So my guess is that last bar is going to go way up. Lots of money is spent on lobbying on these various programs. Each program has its own constituency. Somebody benefits from every single program in the Farm Bill, and you can bet that a lot of money is being spent to protect that. Agribusiness gives lots of money to congressional candidates of one kind or another. The chart on the left is total in millions of dollars given in various ways to congressional candidates. Again, already in 2012, agribusiness has donated $39 million to candidates of one kind or another. Most of them are Republicans, as shown in the chart on the right. Agribusiness tends to favor the red bars, the Republicans, with its campaign contributions. So they're betting that the Republicans are going to win this election. And the campaign contributions go to very key people. So here's Open Secret's summary of the top recipients of agribusiness lobbying money in 2011 and 2012. Debbie Stabenow, who's the head of the Senate Agriculture Committee, got the most. She's already gotten half a billion no, $500,000 this year. So it's much bigger. Mitt Romney, who you probably heard of, also got a lot, and Barack Obama. Frank Lucas, who is the head of the House Agricultural Committee, also got a lot, and Rick Perry, who was at that time a candidate for president. So they put the money where they think it's going to do the most good. This lets cartoonists have a field day, and this cartoon says, of course there's pork, it's a farm bill. But overall, the Farm Bill historically has favored and provides incentives for big, intensive industrial agriculture. It favors the South and Midwest over other areas of the country. It promotes and protects the price of animal feed, corn and soybeans. It loves biofuels. And it promotes overproduction, and it rewards farms for producing more, leading to a glut of food in the marketplace, an enormous number of calories that have to be sold, and of course I think that has a lot to do with obesity. Now, the elephant in the Farm Bill, which I haven't mentioned up until now, is its biggest component, which is SNAP, or food stamps. Participation in the food stamp program has gone up and up and up, and in 2011 there were 46 million participants in food stamp, it's now SNAP recipients, or 14.5% of the entire population of the United States was receiving SNAP benefits at a cost of $72 billion in taxpayers' money. Now, any sensible person might ask the question, what on earth are food stamp benefits doing in the Farm Bill? And the answer to that is log rolling. It's a very, very simple answer. As the number of farms declined and the population in the country shifted from rural to urban areas, it became more and more difficult to pass agricultural supports. And so the supporters of commodity agriculture got together with the supporters of urban environments and made a deal. You vote for what we want and we'll vote for what you want. And both sides have liked that system very much, and the Senate voted today to maintain that system. Where the money in the Farm Bill goes, as I've already said, most of it goes to SNAP. And here's a cartoon or a pie chart of what the Farm Bill expenditures look like, where the supports for actual commodity agriculture, insurance, commodity, and conservation are just a tiny little wedge in the financial pie. All of this has led to attempts to try to look at SNAP benefits and say, shouldn't SNAP benefits be used to promote health as well as just giving people money for which to buy food? And so the big issue in SNAP right now, aside from trying to protect it from being cut, is who benefits most from the food stamp benefits. A report came out a week or so ago that suggested that corporations and banks are the biggest recipients of money from the food stamp program, and a group in Washington, the Commission for the Study of the Presidency and Congress, has produced a website called Snap to Health, in which they are talking about ways to encourage SNAP recipients to be healthier and to buy healthier foods. Where this is going to lead, I do not know, but it's a huge issue and one that a lot of people in this room are writing about. Federal spending on the farm safety net needs to be put into context of the big picture of federal expenditures. The pie on the left is the total federal budget for the 10-year period from 2010 to 2020. It's $46 trillion, a number too big for me to understand. Only 2% of that is Farm Bill plus nutrition, is farm supports plus nutrition programs, so that it's tiny in comparison to everything else that the government does, but it amounts to $1.1 trillion projected over the next 10 years. So that's a lot of money. Now, the the politics about this particular farm bill were really about opposition to the direct payments. And what I loved about the opposition to the direct payments was that it was a classic example of how politics makes strange bedfellows. On the one hand, the conservative American Enterprise Institute was putting out papers saying we needed to get rid of direct payments. These were the payments that went to people who weren't necessarily farming. And the somewhat left-wing, I think it's fair to say, Environmental Working Group also was opposed to direct payments and had this wonderful map of Manhattan with little red stickers all over Manhattan and New York showing individuals in New York City who were getting direct payments, although they lived in New York City and clearly weren't doing much in the way of farming. I wondered if I could get direct payments for the blueberries I grew on my terrace. No, specialty crop. Another reason why there was so much opposition to direct payments had to do with the fact that Big Ag is getting very rich. And this is an Economic Research Service study of gross farm income. The black line on the black line is gross farm income, and the dotted line is production expenses. And over the last 20 years, income has exceeded production expenses, and so big agriculture is doing really pretty well. And of course, big agriculture wants to keep it that way. So again, the cartoonists had a field day. This one says, looks like they passed the farm bill. Too bad the farmers aren't here to see this. And the fat guy is saying, I am a farmer. So lots and lots of opposition to direct payments. Once you're subject to ridicule, it's hard to maintain them. And so the other interesting things about this is that the commodities that got the biggest subsidies in 2010 were in order: corn, wheat, soybeans, cotton, and rice. Those figures are in billions or hundreds of millions. And then there were a bunch of little commodities, funny things like canola and trees and lamb and safflower and mustard seed had little teeny amounts in comparison. But specialty crops, fruits and vegetables, got zero support from the Farm Bill, and there's a lot of pressure to try to change that. The Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, which is a pro-vegan group in Washington, put out this comparison: the U.S. Dietary Advice MyPlate and the USDA Subsidies MyPlate, showing how the subsidies went to meat and dairy foods because corn and soybeans are what cattle are fed, and very, very little. And that tiny, tiny little wedge at the top is fruits and vegetables that are supposed to take up half the plate. So a big political brouhaha about all of this. I should say something about ethanol as well, because that's also a big issue here. And Imhoff's Food Fight has these really great illustrations of the increase in billions of gallons of ethanol produced by corn production from 1998 to 2011. And the 40% figure is the percent of U.S. corn that is used for ethanol this year. That's pretty amazing. And it has a big effect internationally. Economists have speculated that the growth of corn for ethanol is the single factor most likely to be responsible for the enormous peak in world food prices that occurred in 2008 and the enormous peak in world food prices that is happening right now. And they've done a track of food prices and the speculation in ethanol, and they track very, very closely. So these kinds of decisions that we're making about agriculture are not trivial. They have worldwide implications. So big pressure to try to get the Farm Bill to do something about health and to make farm policy consistent with health policy. And we don't really know where all of that is going to go. We can talk about what the bill that the Senate has passed, but what will actually happen to it between now and the time the final bill is passed, it seems to me is a big question mark. We just don't know where it's going to go. There is some room for hope, I think actually quite a bit of room for hope. For example, from 2002 to 2008, the Farm Bill support for organic production increased from practically nothing to quite a bit in 2008, and the Senate Farm Bill has even more money in it, but it's millions, not billions. It's a tiny fraction of what the Farm Bill actually is supporting. There's been a big lobbying effort to try to get the Agriculture Committee and Congress to invest in healthier food and to try to bring agricultural policy in line with health policy. This was a letter that the Environmental Working Group circulated. I was one of the signers on it. Lots of other people signed it too. So here's Senate 3240, the bill that was passed this afternoon. I've been watching it all week, because it's been going on all week, and I was kind of amazed that the Senate put forth 300 amendments to the bill. I couldn't imagine how anybody could keep track of those. There are a number of provisions in the bill that were promoting fruits and vegetables, and I've listed the millions that were in the original one. There have been some changes in that since some of the amendments increased some of these numbers and did other things with other numbers. So I don't know what the exact numbers are now, but there was an attempt to try to increase market access to fruits and vegetables, to fund a fruit and vegetable program. The Defense Department has its own program for fruits and vegetables. SNAP incentives in the SNAP program to enable SNAP recipients to buy fruits and vegetables at lower cost or for their benefits to go further. There was $20 million put into that. There may be more now. And then the farmers market and local food production. So plenty of reason for lots of people to support the bill, figuring that they couldn't get anything better. That the fact that this stuff was in there was terrific, and most of the organizations that have been advocating for fruits and vegetables have come out in favor of this farm bill. This week I was tracking, this is from yesterday, I was tracking on the United States Senate its summary of what was happening with the amendments, and I don't know what to say about them. I mean, they just kind of leave me speechless. Some of them are very important, like limits on crop insurance and requirement that people who get benefits have to comply with conservation requirements. But I don't know what to make of this amendment, 3240, which is about how television and film extras who bring pets to work don't have to have unnecessary regulations. That's the Farm Bill. It's got the most amazing things in it. What's that doing there? And then Ron Johnson, yesterday, he's a senator, one of the senators, a Republican senator, said, look, everybody, let's send this thing back to committee because we need to be honest about this bill. This is two completely separate bills. I want this bill to go back to committee so it's split. Let's have one bill that's a welfare bill and one bill that's a farm bill. And this was rejected 59-40. The 40 people senators who voted for it were all Republicans. Remember, log rolling works, and the anti-hunger community thinks it's really important to protect this because otherwise, if they had a welfare bill, the Republicans would kill it. But I think having 40 senators is quite a lot, and this is an issue that is going to come up again and again. This was defeated. So what is the Farm Bill and why should you care? I think it's because it's about democracy, and it's about voting with your fork, and it's about trying to understand how government works and why these individual programs are the way they are, and who supports them, and where the money is going. But perhaps you need to know about it because, as Face Your Farmer put out, 1 in 5 teenagers will be experimenting with farming, and you need to talk to your kids about farming. Digging is a gateway to gardening. I thought this was really funny. Know the warning signs of farming. But I also think that it's important to understand the Farm Bill because it's part of what's happening in politics these days and part of what's happening in the food movement. And I'm very impressed by what happened with Occupy, with the Occupy movement last fall, and a big piece of that, at least in New York, was Occupy Big Food, take back our food system, and occupy our food supply. So there are real politics going on here and plenty for people to do. So what this is about is democracy in action, and I hope that if you're not already part of the food movement, but you are, you'll join it and get other people to do it. I think we need to fix the Farm Bill and enjoy the conference. Thank you very much.
We have a few minutes for Q&A. We have a couple of microphones. Please make sure to speak into the microphone because the talk is being taped and it's important that everybody hears you.
I've left them speechless. That's an accomplishment.
Hi, it's Saul, Marion. The question is on the commodities side, on the farm loans. You may know I chair a task force for the American Anthropology Association on world food problems. In 2008, in the midst of the crisis with the spike and then the depression that followed, several countries, South Africa, Argentina and Brazil, all those farmers had real trouble getting cash to put their crops in because they were dependent upon loans. And I thought at the time, I thought the same problem would be present in the United States. And in fact, it wasn't. The U.S. got through completely because it was a separate program that was built into the Farm Bill. And I'm wondering to what extent is that being continued now, because that was a really good insurance policy that allowed the entire country to get through the food side of the big financial crisis pretty unscathed.
Yeah, my understanding is that the loans stay, but if anybody knows differently about that. Most of the shift from the direct payments is going into crop insurance, which is sort of the new way in which the government is going to be supporting farmers. And there's some limits on the crop insurance. But crop insurance, when I was teaching the class, the people who were in my class said, why aren't we in the crop insurance business? The government takes all the risk and we get all the money. It's kind of amazing. So there are things about the farm support system that work for the commodity producers. What everybody worries about is what about small farms? What about regional farms? What about people who want to go into farming? What about small farmers? What about new farmers? And there's pittance in the Farm Bill for these kinds of innovative ideas, and what everybody hopes is that that'll get larger. Oh.
Hi, Marion. It's Erica.
Hi.
One of the last graphics that you showed, which was really funny, about kids being curious and experimenting with farming, and one of the quotes was, "We expect more out of you than farming."
Right.
So I'm curious, you just mentioned, but I'm curious if you do see potential for anything specific to come out of the Farm Bill that will increase support for new farmers whether they're young or immigrant farmers, things people entering the farming profession?
Yeah, there are a few things in there that are doing that, and there are young people going into farming everywhere. For the first time in the last couple of years, the number of farmers has increased, and it's people who are doing small farming, usually specialty crops, and there's a lot of concern about it. There is some money in the Farm Bill for that. I don't know what the exact figure is offhand. But it's there, and it's growing, and there's a lot of pressure on Congress to do something about it. So keep that pressure up. It's working.
Hi, Marion. It's Annie.
Hi.
Hi. It's not so much a question. I just, your graphs were great, and the large percentage of people that participate in the SNAP program was quite striking. Daniel Bowman-Simon is going around handing out cards on which is printed just 2 sentences in the Food Stamps Now SNAP program saying that people can use their benefits to buy seeds to grow vegetables.
And starter plants.
Vegetables and fruits. So, people getting involved in agriculture and relating it, finding that it relates to food, this is a really good way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can talk to Daniel, he's here or was here or will be here, about his program, which is really nifty because he kind of discovered that and has been getting it into farmers markets. And you see signs in farmers markets saying, yes, you can buy plants and seeds with SNAP benefits. It's terrific. Get them into farming. No.
How did the Defense Department justify getting involved with fruits and vegetables? How are fruits and vegetables a part of national defense?
Oh, that's an easy question to answer. The Defense Department is frantic with worry about the levels of obesity in its recruits. They are enormously worried about not only the fact that people gain weight when they're in the military because of the food that they're eating, and therefore can't fight, but also because they're going to be developing chronic diseases that are going to be the responsibility of the military to take care of in decades and to come. So they are, politics makes such strange bedfellows. They are among the strongest proponents of healthier diets in America. They're really, really working hard on it, and that's why millions of dollars are going into that. They're pushing really hard on it. So. Is that it? That's it? Thank you very much. Enjoyed the conference.